Hey, how you doing? Chris Denman, partner and attorney at Denman Perlman. Let's talk about understanding your bodily injury motor vehicle insurance claim. And as you probably know by now, there's a bunch of different claims that we open up at the beginning of your auto wreck case. And there's usually multiple ones. We have property claims, and then there's uninsured motorist claims. But we're going to talk about in this video, we're going to talk about bodily injury, which is one of the most important claims that we open up. And so, you know the deal. You're in a wreck. It's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault because they drove in a way that they violated certain safety rules of the road. And as a result of this other person's bad driving, you're injured. And that's where bodily injury insurance comes into play. Bodily injury insurance, it's a third party insurance. What that means is it's not your insurance. We're not talking about your bodily injury insurance if you've been in a wreck. We're talking about the person who caused the wreck, and we're talking about their insurance. And it's their insurance that they have purchased, and it's there to pay for your injuries, bills, and pain and suffering. So we need to know what that is, and we want to figure out what that is right at the beginning of the case. And briefly, we talk about this a lot in the case. And if you're watching this video, you're watching it now kind of early in the process. But still, it's a good time for us to start talking about pain and suffering because it's a concept it's a little bit more intangible than, say, actual medical bills. It is a concept about what has been taken from you as a result of this accident. And it's a little bit early in the process for us to totally fully contemplate what that's going to be. And hopefully in your case, it's going to be small, right? Hopefully in your case, you've been put out, but you're going to get better before too long. But sometimes, because these, cars are pretty big machines, and human beings are not made to be in these big accidents with these big machines going really quick. And human being bodies are not made to handle all this stuff. So we do see a lot in car accidents. We see pain and suffering that lasts for an extended period of time. And when we're talking about it, we're looking at activities that maybe you find that you used to be able to do, but you can't do anymore, or kind of just as bad activities that you have to do, responsibilities that you have to do, but they really stink now because they hurt when you're doing it, whereas before it wasn't like that. So, but back to the bodily injury insurance, how do we determine what the insurance limits are? Because even if you called the cops on scene, the cops, they gave you a police report, and hopefully they let you know at least the insurance policy of the driver of the vehicle. The insurance company's name, and maybe the insurance policy number, but they didn't give you all the details as to whether or not a person had bodily injury insurance, and if so, how much it is. So we got to get it. Luckily in Florida, we have a law that says we can absolutely get that information, and we have a process by which we can get it. And I say luckily in Florida because some other states, it's crazy. Like they make you file a lawsuit before you can even figure that information out. And that's not necessarily the most effective way of doing it. But Florida, they take a different path. And Florida says they want to encourage us trying to resolve claims, including bodily injury claims, before a lawsuit is filed, if at all possible. And so Florida has a policy in place for us to be able to get that information directly from the insurance company. And so there's an actual Florida statute that talks about it. And in the statute, we've highlighted here, disclosure of certain information required, the limits of the liability coverage, the name of the insurer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right to the insurance company that we know or that we believe that the person who caused the accident is dealing with, and we're going to ask them for information. And so what we want to get from them, what we want to get from the insurance company is we want to get the declaration page. That's like the official document that you have with your insurance company that spells out what your insurance policy is. And just as importantly, because we don't trust insurance companies because sometimes they're kind of assholes, we want a deck page that's been certified by the insurance company, that they swear basically under oath that this is the deal. And what we do then is after if you're watching this, we've already done this, right? So within 24 hours, because in these cases, every day matters, because it's not necessarily the fastest process, but within 24 hours of you retaining our firm, we've already sent out a letter of rep, which is something like this. It's a letter to the insurance company that we send out via fax. We also send it out via certified mail or we don't trust insurance companies, so we want to have a record in place. And it is a letter that says, hey, pursuant to the statute, you make sure you give us all of this information. And there's actually more stuff that we ask, but this is the stuff that's relevant for this video, which is the limits of liability coverage. And if there isn't any liability coverage, if there isn't any bodily injury coverage, then a statement swearing under oath that that's what we're talking about here. Sometimes, but not always, but sometimes they'll let us know over the phone, and they'll give us like an oral policy. They'll say, all right, Chris, we're going to send that letter out, the deck page. But I can tell you over the phone right now that there's going to be $50,000 worth of bodily injury coverage. We ask every time, or, our team members ask every time, but they don't have to. And some insurance companies are cooler about it than others. The deck page, however, is due within 30 days of our request. So we send out that letter, we're automatically tracking it, and we're making sure that they turn over that deck page within 30 days, because the Florida Department of Financial Services says that we can tattletale on insurance companies if they're not following the rules, and sometimes that can open up new claims for us. So we're tracking that. This is a copy of what a deck page looks like. So it says even on the top, this is a progressive deck page. This is your declarations page. And again, I've highlighted for you in this example deck page what we're looking for. So in this case, we have liability to others. And one of those liabilities to others, remember, this is the deck page for the person who caused the accident, but they have liability insurance to others. That would be you if you're the one in the accident, or your family member. In this particular example, bodily injury liability coverage of $10,000 for a person and $20,000 for an accident. And what that means is if you are in an auto wreck, somebody else causes the auto wreck, and now you're injured as a result, we know that there's bodily injury coverage for you up to $10,000 by Progressive on behalf of their insured. And we also know that if you're in an auto wreck and let's say your husband is sitting next to you and you're both injured, it's a pretty bad wreck and you both have injuries, then we know that Progressive has $20,000 available for the both of you. Of course, the way these policies work is it's, in this case, it's 10 for a person, 20 for each accident. That's the total amount of bodily injury, at least with this particular policy, whether there's 2 people injured, 3 people injured, 5 people injured. So it's something we have to keep in mind. And in cases with multiple vehicles, we got to figure out right away how many vehicles were involved, how many people were injured, because we want to make sure that we protect your rights and that if possible, you guys get paid first. So what if we find that there's no bodily injury insurance? Because unfortunately, that happens. So Florida is one of the few states where there is not a requirement that everybody driving have bodily injury insurance. There's a requirement that everyone have PIP insurance. We'll talk about that in another video, but there's not a requirement that everyone have bodily injury insurance. So what do we do if we come up snake eyes on it? Well, the first thing we do, a lot of attorneys miss this, and it's a shame, is under Florida law, it's not just the driver that's responsible for the bad driving, but it's also the owner of the vehicle. Even if the owner of the vehicle wasn't there, but the owner of the vehicle, as long as the car wasn't stolen from the owner of the vehicle, but if the owner of the vehicle gives somebody else permission to drive a car, then they're liable for any injuries as well. So we actually want to make sure right away to check to see if the owner is different than the driver. And if so, we're looking for bodily injury coverage from both parties. And the way we do that is if the cop hasn't gathered that information, there's some tools that we can do online, and we pay a few bucks and we can get some insurance traces done. We do that in every case. If there's no bodily injury insurance, we can also look to see if you have something called uninsured motorist coverage. And uninsured motorist coverage is exactly like bodily injury coverage, except for it's something that you buy and you would have previously purchased it. And it's something like, just in case you're in an accident and you get hurt, but the person who did this and caused the accident, if they don't have any bodily injury insurance, or if they don't have enough, like in the example we saw earlier, they only have $10,000 worth of bodily injury coverage, but your injuries exceed that, then uninsured motorist coverage will kick into play there. And commercial umbrella coverage. We're looking to see if there's any other policies that are available. Finally, we're looking at the bad driver's assets, if any. And it's kind of the last thing, because if you know anything about Florida law, Florida's it's really hard to collect on somebody under Florida law individually. You got to have a lot of extra assets, like a house is protected, a first car is protected. So if you're going to sue another individual and you're trying to go after that individual and try to get their assets to pay for your damages, they have to be really liquid. So we check on that in every case when there's no bodily injury insurance coverage. But most people who are living paycheck to paycheck are just simply not going to be collectible, and it's not going to be worth bringing a claim. So we really want to make sure that there's these other insurance coverages available. Well, that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching, and take care.